Mark, thank you. After 2 months of little legal movement and no national attention, the fatal shooting of a black man by 2 white men in Georgia is quickly moving with new developments. The father and son suspects are charged with felony murder and jailed without bail. 2 controversial videos have been released, and local prosecutors who first handled the case are under investigation.
And now, according to TMZ, the mother of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery says the man who videotaped the killing of her son should be prosecuted. Joining us live is criminal defense and civil rights attorney Brian Claypool. Brian, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So this person we're talking about is William Roddy Bryan. He was not involved in this case, but he hasn't explained why he was recording Arbery as he was jogging and why he was recording the confrontation that followed. Why are his actions, the person who did the videotaping, drawing the attention of the Georgia State Attorney General?
Right. So Roddy Bryan was driving behind the McMichaels truck, and he was videotaping, and he failed to call 911. And then what he did, Frank, is there's been evidence that he used his truck to block Ahmaud Arbery from running back toward his house. Oh. So what the Georgia State Attorney is looking at is a possible crime called being an accomplice. In other words, that Roddy Bryan might have been complicit in carrying out the crime. Now, what evidence do you need for that? It could be either what's called direct evidence, which would be helpful. And what I mean by that is maybe a text message exchange between Bryan and the McMichaels, any kind of email, or maybe even a witness that overheard those 3 talking about what they wanted to do to Ahmaud Arbery. The second type of evidence is what we're talking about, circumstantial, which is why is Roddy Bryan driving behind McMichaels, taping it, number one. And then I think the biggest piece of evidence against Bryan is when he moved his truck to try to block Ahmaud Arbery from running back. So that, if you've got evidence of that, it might be considered an accomplice, but it is a hard charge to prove.
Brian, what are the 2 legal precedents that led you to say the motive for why Arbery was shot and killed is irrelevant?
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about, what happened on a surveillance tape the day of the shooting, and then there's been a tape released on February 11th. So February 11th was 2 weeks before the shooting. February 23rd was the shooting. There's been a lot of discussion about, oh, it looks like Ahmaud Arbery. You're showing the tape right now. Well, that is irrelevant because the McMichaels weren't even aware of the tape that you're showing right now. That's the day of the shooting. They didn't even know about that tape. But the way you've got to break this down is there's 2 ways to evaluate this. Number one is, did the McMichaels have legal authority to even pull over Ahmaud Arbery or confront him? In other words, did they have probable cause? The only way they can get that is through what's called a citizen's arrest. The only way you can do that is if a crime has been committed or you have what's called immediate knowledge of a crime. So I would argue that there wasn't a crime committed by Arbery. If anything, it was a misdemeanor, but you can't do a citizen's arrest for that. And I don't think the McMichaels had immediate knowledge of a crime. So even if you assume, though, that they had probable cause through citizen's arrest to pull over Arbery, the most critical point that people aren't talking about is the use of force. Was the use of force justified? And clearly, even police officers, they can't deploy deadly force unless there's an immediate threat of what's called grave bodily harm to them. And if you look at this videotape, Travis McMichael jumps out of the truck with a shotgun. Now, what people aren't talking about as well is Arbery has a legal right to defend himself. And that's what he's doing in the videotape. You can't escalate a situation and take a gun to a fist fight and then say that Arbery can't defend himself. So arguably, this was an unjustified use of force. And what the McMichaels were thinking doesn't even matter. It's what happened at that moment at the shooting.
Well, fascinating insight there. Brian Claypool, as everyone knows, is a criminal defense and civil rights attorney. Law offices in Pasadena. For more information, go to his website, or you can follow him on Twitter. Brian, always interesting. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Brian.